And good afternoon, Minister. Just want to acknowledge the Taoiseach's opening remarks as well. I was very grateful to be updated on the Council meeting from the week before last. Just have 4 points to make, really, in relation to the debrief and to the meeting itself. The first one is in relation to rule of law, and I do share the concerns of a number of the deputies in the Chamber that we are concerned about what's happening in Poland and in Hungary at the moment. I think rule of law, fundamental freedoms, democracy, they are central tenets of the European Union, and from our point of view, they should be non-negotiable red lines. And I'd agree with President von der Leyen when she said that what's happening in those two countries, it is a direct threat to the legal order in the European Union, and by extension, the existence of the European Union itself. I'm a little bit disappointed that there wasn't more stringent action taken against Poland and Hungary. I do appreciate the political nuances and stuff that's at play, but I think if the Polish Constitutional Court has a problem with the compatibility of European Union legislation, well, it's up to Poland to amend their constitution accordingly, just like we did in Ireland numerous times over the last 50-odd years. I think that's the direction we should be going in. So I think we should apply all the levers that we have available to apply pressure to those two countries, from a judicial point of view, from a diplomatic point of view, from a political point of view, and also from an economic point of view. There are conditionalities associated with EU funds, and I know we shouldn't use this as a first resort, but it certainly should be used as a last resort, and it's something we should consider at the next EU Council meeting before Christmas, if it comes to that. The second point I'd like to raise is in relation to energy prices, and I know it's been mentioned a lot today, and there is a massive spike in energy prices. I think we'd all appreciate it. We can see it at the petrol pumps. It's going to drive more people into fuel poverty, but also, and almost as importantly, it's going to undermine that key message in relation to energy, to renewable energy transition, basically. And people will blame the transition to renewable energy as a reason for the price spike. It's a factor, yes, but not the dominant factor by any shape or means. I agree with the European Union's approach that there should be short, medium and long-term measures put in place. And I welcome the fact that the European Investment Bank is going to be mobilised for the medium to long-term solutions. But I just want to dwell a small bit on the short-term solutions. I do appreciate that the government did bring in amendments to the fuel allowance, both in terms of size and longevity. But there are a few other measures that are mentioned in the toolkit, the EU toolkit, that I'm not convinced we have fully explored or fully exploited. The first one is in relation to deferred payments. And perhaps the Minister could mention it in his closing remarks, but have we explored with the energy companies the possibility of people deferring their payments until later on in the winter once the spike is done? Are there any safeguards brought in relation to preventing people from having their electricity supply cut off? That's another measure that could be explored fully. And then have we the safeguards here to make sure that there's no cartel-like behaviour or any speculation going on, for instance, that are driving up the prices? We do know that the energy companies are very, very lucrative, they're very, very profitable, and I guess the question that a lot of people are asking is, should the energy companies not be absorbing these losses? They're far more able to absorb spikes like this rather than the average consumer in Ireland, and maybe it's something we should explore. There was another key point mentioned in Brussels as well, that we know the national grid is particularly vulnerable at the moment, and we know from a cyber point of view how vulnerable we are from a HSE perspective. Just has the National Cyber Security Centre done an audit in relation to the national grid, and are we convinced and reassured that we have the necessary safeguards in place, that we're not vulnerable to a cyber attack from a national grid point of view? And the third point I'd like to raise is in relation to forced migration. Obviously, it's a big issue on the Belarusian border at the moment, and I agree with the characterisation of what's going on there with refugees as the instrumentalisation of refugees, and it is. By instrumentalisation, it just means exploitation or further exploitation. What's happened there is a disgrace, and the EU are right to call it out for what it is. It is a hybrid attack on Lithuania and other EU countries by the Belarusian regime. And as a member of the Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee, I just want to highlight the case of one political prisoner at the moment, Artyom Baryatsky. And he's a student, and his only alleged crime was to use his freedom of speech, which he's entitled to. So his show trial is coming up in the next few weeks. I know the Minister has been publicising other political prisoners as well. So I just want to send solidarity and emphasise the fact that Ireland, through the European Union, should be absolutely putting maximum pressure on the Belarusian regime to prevent these trials and to ensure their immediate release. And I think sanctions is the appropriate way. I agree with the fact that the European Union has agreed to the principle of sanctions, increased sanctions on Belarus, but I would prefer if the sanctions were actually implemented. And I think there should have been a list of or a palette of sanctions available to the leaders of the countries 2 weeks ago, rather than waiting for December. So that's hopefully something we can work on before Christmas. The last point I'd like to raise then is in relation to the pandemic. And yes, it is good that Ireland is top of the class at 93% from a vaccination perspective. I think we should never try and meet the standard. We should always try to be the standard. And we are, for a change, at the top of the list, and that's exactly how it should be. I think more work needs to be done in relation to tackling the vaccine misinformation out there, and that will improve the vaccine hesitancy in this country and beyond. But also we need to do more in relation to I know we have done some already in relation to the rollout of vaccines across the world, particularly for resource-poor countries. And the last point I'd like to raise is I do agree with the principle of there being an international treaty on pandemics under the governance of the WHO, and I think that is a good way to go. Obviously, we'll have to see the details of it, but the principle is completely sound. So in summary, Cathal and Minister, I'm grateful for the update from the meeting from 2 weeks ago. What I'd like to see in the last council meeting between now and Christmas is more sanctions brought on the Belarus authorities in relation to particular prisoners, in relation to the hybrid attacks that are taking place on EU countries. And also I'd like more pressure brought to bear on Poland and Hungary, that they regularise their rule of law issues over there. Thank you very much.